And we're back with the Python Institute, this time with lab number 4.1.3.8, talking about the day of the year and writing more of our own functions. Now, this lab starts off by saying, hey, there is a prerequisite here. In fact, two prerequisites. You need to go ahead and complete labs 4136 and 4137 because we are going to be repurposing and reusing the code that's already out there. Now, the level of difficulty for these guys is medium. This one will take a little while for us to work through. Thankfully, we already have some few functions to be able to base our code off of that we can then get a jump start with. In fact, if you look at the code over here, you can see that these two functions right here, is leap year and days in month, immediately pull right out of 4136 where it asks, is it a leap year? And 4137 where we figure out the number of days in a specific month. So we'll be able to just copy that code right in. So let's see, the objectives, projecting and writing parameterized functions, perfect. Utilizing return statements, all right. Building a set of utility functions, and utilizing your own functions. All right, so your scenario, your task is to write and test a function which takes 3 arguments, a year, a month, and a day of the month. So previously it was just year and month, and returns the corresponding day of the year or returns none if any of the arguments are invalid. Use the previously written and tested functions and some test cases to test the code. This is only the beginning, it says. All right, so basically January 1 should be day number 1. January number 2 should be day number 2. And so on until the very last day of the year should either be December 31st, should either be 365 or 366, depending on whether it's a leap year or not. So before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and replace these two highlighted functions with the code from 4137. So I'm going to go ahead and select these guys, just copy, Control C, and Control V. Maybe? There we go. So I've gone ahead, I've copied those functions over. I'm just going to collapse those to give myself a little bit more working room. So I see I now also have to create a new function called day of year. I see I take 3 parameters, a year, a month, and a day. And then I have a sample command right here. It says print day of year, see 2012-31. So it's December 31st in the year 2000. If I remember correctly, the year 2000 is a leap year. So that should be 366 as the result. So that, let's see. So this command right here, or this call, calls this function. Now I know previously from our prior lab in 4137, the days of the month calls the is leap year function. So that tells me that my day of year function also needs to call days in the month. All right, well, let's see what we can do. There's a couple of things I might need to have working in here. First off, I need to be able to return a none statement. So I'll want to look to see what kind of values I have being brought in here. If it's before 1587, when leap years were established, I want to report back an error. I want it to tell me none. If the month is more than 12 or is negative, I want it to report none. And if the days of the month are more than 31 or less than 0, I want it to report an error as well. So let's go ahead and we'll start off with that first, since that seems to be the most straightforward. I'm just going to start, I'll write a comment in here and I'll call it validate inputs. And we'll just check it out here. Let's see, if year, what was it? If year is less than 1582. If year less than 1582, and I can actually do an or. No, don't need that. Never mind. If year is less than 1582, then I want to return a none message. All right. Then if month is greater than 12 or month is less than 1. So we previously talked about the AND command, or the AND option, which said if this and this are both true, this time we're saying or. So if the month is greater than 12 or is less than 1, then we want to do something. Specifically, we want to return none. And then lastly, same thing for day. If day is greater than 31 or less than 1, return none. Now that day greater than 31, that's I may want to come back to that, because not all days have 31, or I'm sorry, not all months have 31 days. Right now I'm just assuming 31 should be the general max, but for the month of February, I might not want to have more than 28, and I may want to alert on that. So I may come back to line number 26 there in the future. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to start calculating the number of days up until the stated day. Let's see, how would I actually do this? Obviously, I have functions to be able to tell me if this is a leap year and how many days in a month. So if it's a January date, then basically I would just call days in the month, which would then say, is this a leap year? And if it's like January 15th, then that's a piece of cake. It's 1 month in, it's day 15, then I know it's exactly 15 days. But if it's a date in December, then that means I need to find out how many days there are in December. I then also need to find out how many days there are in November, and October, and September, and I'm trying to say the days of the month backwards, but basically I have to figure out how many days there are in the month for every single month leading up to, in this case, December 31st. So I'm going to need some sort of a loop in order to go through the days of the month calculation for multiple months for that year. Since I'm going to have to do some sort of loop, then that means I'm going to need some sort of a variable to hold the value of number of days. So let's start off with some documentation here, a remark, and I'm going to say calculate days. And I'm going to create a variable called total days. And let's just say total days. You know what? By default, this day value is going to be the day of the month. So if it's January 15th or December 31st, whatever that day value should be the first thing that goes into total days, because it's going to be part of a month. So I'm going to say total days is equal to day. Whether it's the first of the month or the last of the month, it's a part of that month. So I want to start with that, but then that means I have to start calculating how many days there are in the month prior to that. So let's start figuring that out. First thing I know, since I just took the number of days for that 1 month, that means I don't need to count that month. What I mean by that, right there is December 31st. I just took 31 days and I added it to my total days counter. I no longer have to count December because I've already put my 31 days of December into my total days. That means December no longer matters. I now only worry about November. So I could actually start saying month equals month minus 1. So I could subtract 1 from the month, and I could start worrying about November and then October and September and all the months prior to that. Well, let's see. Let's do a loop. Let's see, a for loop, while loop. I'm going to do a while loop. So let's see, while month is greater than 0. So we're going to keep subtracting months as we go through here. Right now, if the month was originally January, we just subtracted 1 from it, which means it will be 0, which means this won't be covered. But if it was originally February, then we subtract 1 from it and it will now be January. So now we can calculate the days of the month in January. All right. So since we're in the prior month now, I can just simply add to total days. Total days. And I want to add to that plus equals. And now I can use my days of the month function. All right. I knew there was a reason they told me to keep that in there. So days in month. And I need to pass them. Let's see. They tell me they're looking for a year and a month. I have a year and a month. So I'm going to go ahead and type in just year, comma, month. And then while I'm here, let's go ahead and subtract 1 from month. So month minus equals 1. All right. And then lastly, I think we should just be able to return total days. So let's walk through this very briefly and see if this makes sense. So I'm passing in the year 2000, the month 12, the day 31. I start off validating those dates. I'm pretty sure those are going to work because they're fairly common for us. The OR statement may be new, but I think we can work with that one. So we start off total days equals day. Our day was 31, so we're adding 31 to total days. In fact, let's actually write that. $31, and then month equals 12. All right, so add total days. Add day to total days. We now have 31. We then subtract 1 from the month. So now month equals 11. And we say, okay, go ahead and find the days of the month. And so we come up to this function right here, which we already know tells us how many days in the month there are. In November, there are 30 days, right? So we add or append to the total days function. We add 30 days. So 31 was already there plus 30, 61 days. We then subtract 1 month or one number from the month. So it goes down to 10 days. And then we come back up through the loop. Total days would be for October. October has 31 days. So 31 days plus the 61 would be 92. And then we subtract 1 from there and we go down to September and so on and so forth. So I think this is working. I'm not going to go all the way down to 0 because I can't remember the names of the months that well. Yeah, but let's see what we can do here. So let's go ahead and run that. And like I said before, I think it should be 366. Oh, I did do a typo. Right there we see month less than 1, but here I just have less than 1. So I need day less than 1. It's always a typo that slows us up, throws us off. All right, so it tells me the number was 366, and like I said, the year 2000, I believe, was a leap year. That means 29 days in the February, which means 366 days total. Let's just change that to 2001, which is not a leap year, so it should return 365. How about 2002? Again, 365, 2003, again, 365, and then 2004, which should be a leap year, 366. All right. So far it's working. The question now is whether we are validating these inputs properly. So let's go ahead and change this to 1581. Because I want to test this out. I want to see what happens if we type in 1581. Does it tell us that we did an error? And it returns back none. So it did, in fact, tell us we had an error. So let's put that back to 2000. If month is greater than 12 or less than 1. So let's go ahead and put the month to 13. Clear that out and run it again. And it gives us an error. And then same thing for the days of the month. If we put in 32 days, should give us another error. There we go. Now, like I said, I wasn't quite sure about this if day is greater than 31, because not every single month goes to 31. For instance, November only has 30 days. So in theory, this should return back an error. As we can see, it actually created a value for us, which isn't real. I mean, that's actually December 1st, not November 31st. So there's actually a problem with our code right there. What I would think is we may want to change this hard-coded number to call this function right here. That means every single time that we come through here, it's going to say, okay, you think you're in this month, and that month has X number of days. Are you saying you have more than that? And especially helpful for the month of February, because we can have 28, 20, or 29 days, or in this case, 30 or 31. So I'm going to replace that 31 there with a call to the function. In order to do that, what we do is we just replace it. We just delete that, and then we type in days in month, and we include in the year, comma, month. So previously we had this code here, which should give us an error. Now if I run it, it should give us an error again. There we go. And if I fix it by changing, say, the month up to December, now it should work. There we go. So now we're being much more dynamic in our processes to make sure that we're always returning the correct, values. And we can confirm this even more by going to February. February 31st does not exist, should give us an error. February 30th does not exist, should give us an error. This is a leap year. The year 2000 is a leap year, so February 29th should work. Oops. But if I change the year to 2001 and run it, it should now give us an error because February 29th doesn't exist in 2001, but February 28th does. All right, so some more fun with functions. I really enjoy the fact that this is building on top of additional functions we've previously done, to the point to where this is actually a viable solution or a viable tool that you might use in a Python script of trying to figure out which day of the year am I in. A lot of different programs work based on day of year, as opposed to just what month and what day of month. It's actual, the first day, the 100th day, the 200th day, the 90th day, however you might want to calculate it out.